So when you say lifestyle, it sounds like that can not only be work lifestyle, but it could even include outside of work. What do you want that to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even for myself, so I was working in investment banking, then I switched and worked at the New York Stock Exchange, and I loved actually working there. It was a really cool job. I got to meet a lot of really interesting people. I got to see Twitter IPO, all these cool companies got to go IPO. Yeah. But I realized that I just didn't want to be in that type of super corporate environment. So for me, actually going into the workplace and getting to wear normal clothes, how silly that sounds, I realized it was important for the environment in which I was in was actually really important for me. I also realized that I didn't want to have to clock in and clock out and do FaceTime, which in finance, you kind of have to do the FaceTime thing. That was not for me. I wanted flexibility in my schedule. So I ended up working for a company called themuse.com. Maybe you've heard of it, probably. Absolutely. It's a career advice site, right? I was one of the early employees, pre-Series A round of funding. I was female founded, and I got to wear what I wanted to work. I got to explore a new industry. And I got really flexible, unlimited vacation. And so for me, from a lifestyle perspective, it allowed me to enjoy my life in New York and not just enjoy my job, which I feel like is really hard for people to reckon with. And I thought both were important for me. And a lot of people were really confused, like, why are you leaving the exchange? That's so dumb. And I was like, well, this is really what I want. And it was such a great move for me.
Yeah, so I think the other interesting thing that you mentioned, and I love that you brought up non-negotiables. I love even the idea and concept of non-negotiables. But to get it to a non-negotiable, you have to know exactly what you want and don't want.
Yes.
And how can people determine that? Is there any thought around that? Because I know for some people that's really hard to know exactly what it is they really want or don't want.
I think it's stop living in your head. That's the first thing, right? So we got to get either out on paper, start journaling through some things. I really recommend journaling if you can't tell.
Yeah.
But I also think it's really around talking to people in different industries. So one of the things that I personally did, and I recommend all of my clients do, is that when you have an idea of something that you're interested in, go find somebody that's doing it and talk to them about it. Ask them very pointed questions about what's a day in the life, what's the career trajectory here, what types of certifications do I need? Asking those really thoughtful questions to get to the bottom of, does this sound interesting to me or not? I was just working with a client and she's looking to get out of healthcare. And with some of her strengths, we were looking at program management. And this week she came to me and she goes, nope, don't want to do it. Talk to somebody in program management, terrible for me. Like it's not going to be good for me. And so, but if she was in just looking at a job description and thinking, you know what, I can do this, and then applying for it, she really probably wouldn't have liked it if she got into it. So actually having conversations with real people that do the job, that's a really important piece of the puzzle. And it's all about networking.
Okay, I love that. Okay. We're going to talk about positioning ourselves in a minute, but I've got a really big question for you, a hard question.
Okay.
It's one,
I'm ready, I think.
It's one I've still been wrestling with at this point in my career. How can you tell if someone is suited to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, I love this question. So I just had somebody last night. I think that there are very specific people that are, and a lot of people that are not, that think that they are. So the people that I feel like are really suited for entrepreneurship are people that are incredibly resilient, that have this entrepreneurial bug that seems to not be able to go away. So I've had a lot of clients who I've worked with over 1,000 clients at this point, one-on-one. Yep. And so I've had clients who, whenever we're going through kind of some of these questions, that they bring up something in corporate, but then they talk about this idea that they have. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit more. And when you start to peel back, what is attractive to them about being an entrepreneur, it's usually lifestyle, it's the ability to be creative, it's the ability to build something. Those things are really hard to replicate, even in a startup or in a corporate environment. And so what I usually say to those people is, if you don't scratch that entrepreneurial itch, you will probably never be happy. So at least try a side hustle to see, does this sound interesting to me? And for me, it's really like listening to a client and hearing them repeat over and over and over again about wanting to start their own thing and realizing you're probably never going to be happy in your job until you try it. So I don't know if you relate to that, but for me, I was always interested in entrepreneurship, even as a little girl. And so it just got to a point where I was like, it's time for me to try this thing out. And if it doesn't work, I'll go back into corporate. And if it does work, awesome.
So to flip that a little bit,
sure.
What are signs that someone, while they might say they want to be an entrepreneur, probably isn't cut out for it?
If you love structure, entrepreneurship is definitely not for you.
Yeah.
If you're you are risk averse, like not for you. But if you're somebody that's willing to take chances, somebody who likes flexibility, who prefers to not be told exactly what projects you'd be working on, you probably are a good fit for entrepreneurship. But the structure piece, I think, is really, really crucial. I even saw that when I was working at a startup, where a lot of people get excited about working for a startup because it sounds cool. And then they get into it and realize, oh my gosh, nobody knows what anybody's doing. And we're all trying to figure it out together. And we're all wearing multiple hats. Like, some people don't thrive in that environment, and that's okay. So structure is the big piece, I think, as a definer between people who are entrepreneurial versus people who just may be better in a more structured environment.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And so last one on the entrepreneurship idea, you use the word resilient.
Yes.
Tell me more about that. How do you define resilient, and how can you tell if someone is super resilient?
Yeah, I think it's getting friendly with the word rejection. And it's somebody who is okay being rejected multiple times over. That's what I usually tell my clients is they'll ask me, what made you successful, quote unquote, successful in your career? And I said, I just got okay with rejection. I hated rejection as a young girl. I hated rejection early in my career, but I realized that the friendlier I got with rejection, the less painful it was, and the more that I could push forward in spite of the rejection. And so when you see somebody who is resilient, they are okay reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn that they don't know, because if they don't respond, no big deal, moving on, right? Somebody who is willing to be told no, and in the anticipation that there will be a yes on the other side. So I would say, for me, my personal experience, but then also what I see with clients, that's a big one, getting friendly with rejection.
That's a great definition. I love that definition. Well, thanks for taking on my curveball question. I really appreciate it. It's something I've been kind of wrestling with, because I have so many people that say, I want to be an entrepreneur. And not all of them, when they make that leap, stay there. Some of them, after 6 months or a year or 2 years, go, I don't like this at all. And I want to go back to the safety of having a paycheck, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I was just figuring out some of those traits that are more likely to determine if someone is going to be a good fit for that.